Number one. Just to start, I'd just like to make it clear this is not my story. This is a story of my grandmother. So, to set the scene, you should know my family is from Minnesota, specifically Big Stone County. I don't expect anyone to know about Big Stone because the town they're from in Big Stone literally has 114 people in it, while the neighboring town has about 1,000. Now, if you've ever driven through rural Minnesota, you probably noticed the flat landscape and houses spread out a half a mile apart down one long stretch of highway. There's not a whole lot to do, and people genuinely know everybody in the area on a first and last name basis. My family all lived in pretty close proximity to each other. My great grandparents and my grandmother at one house, and my two great uncles and their spouses living in a house spread out on the same side of the road about a mile apart, separated by fields from either side of my great grandparents. But across the road from one of my great uncles, there's a farmhouse, and in this farmhouse lives three brothers, the Rinkies. I believe that's the correct name. These three brothers were all in their late 30s, early 40s, and were all three plagued with various mental health issues. I know two of the brothers were both paranoid schizophrenics, and while I'm not entirely sure about the third brother, I know he had similar issues. As you can probably imagine, having these kind of major health issues in the 70s, coupled with isolation that rural life brings, and inadequate mental health care, these three men were not getting the treatment they so desperately needed. One of the brothers was known to constantly wear a construction helmet and to have daily long walks around town. During one of his walks, my family happened to be eating lunch at the stereotypical local diner. The Rinky brother walked by the window near their table, stopped, and then turned to point at my grandmother. At this time, she was in her 20s, while yelling, "The daughter, the daughter." My great uncle Marlin had struck up a friendship with the brothers. He would regularly try to visit the Rinkies just to check up on them, especially when he would see one of the brothers standing naked in the field eating cereal, which was evidently a weekly occurrence. One of the brothers was a heavy smoker and would regularly try to invite himself into Marlin's house. Marlin said he would politely decline on the notion that he didn't like cigarette smoke in his house, which was an excuse the Rinky brothers would always accept happily. That seemed to always be the case until one morning Marlin woke up and saw his back door was slightly ajar. He went to close it and noticed a faint smell of cigarettes in his house. Upon further investigation, he found several cigarette butts in his sink, with one of them still slightly smoking. There are a lot of stories that I heard about the Rinkies, but the last one I want to share happened to my great grandmother. It's pretty straightforward, but, in my opinion, is the most uncomfortable. She was home with my great grandfather during the day and decided to take a shower. When she got out and dried off in the bathroom and heard a knocking at the window, she looked over and guess who? One of the Rinkies had been watching her in the whole time. My great grandmother went out and threatened him and the brother, and then they left. Now, I don't know the exact timeline of all these events, but I do know that eventually two of the brothers were institutionalized in another county, and the third brother eventually ended up committing suicide in the house they all lived in. After they all left the home, it remained untouched and unentered for about 5 or 6 years, which isn't totally unheard of as a rural part of Minnesota, and I guess the rural part of any state in general, are often dotted with various abandoned farmhouses that are usually overtaken by animals and nature in general. Marlin knew this, and one day he and his son decided to enter the home and set up traps for any animals living in the new den. Marlin is still an avid hunter and trapper in the area, so this wasn't a weird thing for him to do. Marlin said upon entering the home, he immediately noticed there were books and multiple TVs stacked in pillars throughout the home that almost reached the ceiling. Obviously, Marlin abandoned his hunting endeavor in the home and claims he hasn't ever gone back. This house is still standing and always served as a boogeyman like visage against the backdrop of the rolling plains whenever I would visit my great grandparents' house while growing up. Honestly, at 26, the house still gives me weird feelings, and in the town, it's seen as the cursed landmark in which is viewed through the lenses of today's views, and our understanding of mental health is absolutely tragic. So, Rinking Brothers, I hope you were able to eventually find peace of mind that you deserved, but please, let's never meet. Number 2. This is something that happened to me a good few years ago, roughly about 7 years when I was 12 or 13. I was walking home from school. It was mid June time, so I parted ways with my friends, and I had about 15 minutes to walk by myself before I got home. I noticed while I was walking with my friends that I kept seeing the same red van along our journey. Now, we usually go a longer ways so we can walk with all of our friends. This red van just kept popping up. Now, I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was different vans. But after a few times, I decided to memorize the number plate after my mom has told me to do so if ever I feel like I'm in danger or if something just doesn't feel right. I parted ways with my friends and started on my journey alone. I decided to take a route that's a little bit longer than the one I usually take, just because I didn't feel comfortable walking through the park by myself. I just had a bad feeling throughout the whole walk home, like something bad was going to happen. I was only a few streets away from my home when the red van started to just crawl behind me.
19.
This man looked to be in his late 30s, early 40s. And he popped his head out and started to try and get my attention and just catcall me. I remember looking at him and just telling him I'm not interested and to leave me alone, but that just made him angry. He started screaming at me and telling me to get into his van. I will forever remember his teeth, those disgusting, yellow, rotting teeth. They were like something of an anti smoking advertisement to scare people into quit smoking. I told him I'll call the police if he doesn't leave me alone. He proceeded to laugh in my face, and he sped off a little bit forward and parked, and he was waiting for me to walk past him. I crossed the road and just started running down the street and just trying to lose the man. Just when I thought I lost him, there he was, pulling up next to me. The sliding door on the side of the van opened, and then there was another man trying to grab me and pull me in. I screamed like there was no tomorrow. The man managed to grab my shoulder, and I just bit him until I could taste blood. The man let go of me, and I ran for
18.
my life. I jumped in the bush and hid. I saw the van making rounds in the neighborhood, and I could see the van driving past every few minutes. It felt like I was in that bush for hours. I checked my watch, and it was coming up to 6 p.m. now. I finished school at 3 p.m. I waited until I didn't see the van for at least 30 minutes before I ran home. As soon as I got in, my parents started questioning me, asking where I was. At first, they were mad as if they thought I just decided to stay out with my friends, but that's when I broke down crying and I told them everything that happened. My parents called the police and I gave them my statement. I even gave them the plate number of the van, but nothing ever came from it, at least as far as I'm aware of. I refused to walk home until I turned 16, and I got lifts from either my friends or my parents made arrangements for me to be picked up. But creepy men in the van, let's not meet again. Number 3. This story happened to me late in February of this year. I'm a militaria collector and specialize in World War II rifles, rare ammo, and bayonets. It's relevant to this story. I live in North Carolina, and every year my friend and I will make a pilgrimage to Louisville, Kentucky for a large military show with hundreds of tables of museum grade items. This year I had taken one good friend of mine named Andrew, and nobody else was free that weekend, so it was just the two of us. Come Sunday, we were on our way back home and had just crossed the West Virginia Virginia state line. We came out of a tunnel and went down a large hill, but whilst coming back up from the dip, I had noticed that I pressed my gas. My RPMs would spike to the red zone, but it had no effect on my speed. At this point, I threw on my hazards and coasted as far as I could, which was just up to an exit that leads to Wytheville, Virginia. We sat there stopped for roughly 5 or 10 minutes trying to diagnose the problem and figure out how to make it home. As we figured, it was an obvious transmission issue, but no clue as to what exactly. We let the car rest for a bit when a vehicle came whipping right in front of us. It was a gold toned minivan with South Carolina palm tree stickers on the back windshield. At this point, three doors open. Three people begin to jump out. but two pulled their legs back in, whilst one older man, who appeared to be in his late 50s and likely smoked a lot, walked up to my window. He began to say that he saw us pulled over, and because he believed in Jesus, he had to help us out of the goodness of his heart because it was so cold and windy. I told him we were on our way home to North Carolina when he proceeded to say that he was from Statesville, North Carolina, and that they were all going home and just passing through. The man was far from alarming himself and seemed honest at first. He then said that his son was the car guy who could help. At this point, he signaled to the van he came from. Two people got out. A very fat, redneck looking woman and a skinny guy in his late 20s who was presumably his son. The younger guy was well spoken, but set
19.
off red flags in all kinds of ways. He was wearing sagging pants and had prison tattoos covering his neck and hands. Both guys were standing by my window, talking, but as that happened, the woman began to wave on everybody that attempted to pull over and help. And this time, the older man had begun to contradict himself and slipped out of character more and more. He told me that they were on their way back to their shop that was 5 minutes away. Red flags were going off more and more, but I still had no reason not to take their help if they could offer it. That's when I went and grabbed my code reader from the trunk so that way we could have more or less an official diagnosis. The older guy followed me around and saw my rifles that I had bought laying aside my luggage. I brought the reader to the front and plugged it in. The son had said he could clear the code if it is an electronic issue, and it would let us go on our way. The code would not erase, and the son asked to sit in my car, since he had on nothing but a loose t shirt and was obviously cold. My buddy Andrew was still in the passenger seat, so I told him he may sit on the edge to break the wind.
19.
The son then proceeds to start my car, gun it in reverse, forward, and reverse again. During this, I for sure thought my car and Andrew were off to whatever crack house these obvious junkies had been coming from. He stopped the car, got out, and said to follow them after begging me for cash so that they could get home. I told him money was tight but offered $20 as more or less of an appeasement. Andrew and I had about 1 minute of sitting there to talk and plan for any issue that may arise. During this, we kept expert communication without the junkies knowing. Whilst going over the plans and talking about what just happened and how sketchy they were, I hear my back door open on my side and turn around to see the older guy had fucking climbed into my back seat. I pull my knife from my door just in case he says that he wants to make sure that we get there. Thank God my car was still not working well. We coasted down the hill and had just enough energy to pull into a garage slash gas station off the exit. The van pulled in as well, and the woman asked what the deal was. I
19.
explained and parked us in the lot. As soon as I exited my car, the older guy has a woman begin to hound me for cash. I explained that we did not have a lot, which did not register with them. I went inside to buy transmission fluid, and all three came with. As soon as we stepped foot inside, the woman began talking about locating an ATM for me to withdraw 200 for them. Keep in mind, nothing that happened with my car working had a thing to do with them. I did pay the son the $20 I promised him, however, because he did give me honest advice of what fluid to buy and how much. The older guy then started to say how pathetic it is that I could not pay for the work they did. Afterward, they all split up, and I called Andrew and told him to lock up and take out my other knife from the door in case they went to him where there were no cameras. Fortunately, they never went near Andrew, and instead the older guy yelled at the other two that it was time for them to go. It was 2 hours later, after a very generous young mechanic drove us around to a few shops to get the right fluid, and helped us by supplying the tools and a funnel to add
19.
it. We got home safely after that. That may not have been the ending had the car worked fine all the way to their shop. If I had not had my buddy Andrew, who was critical during the entire thing, or he had not seen I was carrying based on the rifles in my trunk. At the time, I had no pistol on me, but after that, I bought a new Glock that goes with me everywhere, because you never know when those things will happen. To Josh the mechanic, if you ever read this, thank you for helping us out that day, and next time we pass by, we're stopping by to give you the payment you deserve. To the junkies of Wyethville, Virginia, let's not meet again. Number 4. Last year, my fiance and my mom passed away, one right after the other. After they died, I obviously fell into a deep depression. Though I thought I was pulling off the whole I'm fine thing, my friends could clearly see through it. As a close friend almost demanded I move in with her and I get out of the apartment I shared with my fiance for 10 years. She wanted me to start fresh, and while I didn't think I was ready to move on, the idea of not living alone was appealing. Plus, her apartment is in a much nicer neighborhood than the one I was currently living in, so I had agreed. Living with her has been fantastic. Our schedules are opposites, me on days, hers on nights, so we both get alone time, but we also have at least one day a week off together so we can hang out. Moving has also allowed me to be able to walk to work as it is so close. I thought it would be a godsend until my 10-minute walk caused a 2-month long nightmare. I decided to sit in a park that's between my apartment and my job one evening after work. As I'm sitting there, a man approached me. I saw his face first. He was almost handsome, if not a little rough looking. Even though I live in an urban area with a high homeless population, it didn't occur to me this man was anything but a mildly handsome 40 something guy. So I smiled and looked back down at my phone, expecting him to walk by me. Nope. He asked me what time it was. When I looked up to tell him, I noticed all the stuff he was carrying. It was so random. A kid's chalkboard with nonsense all over it, a paper bag full of old magazines and paperwork, a steel shelf that at one point would have held CDs. I then noticed he wasn't wearing any shoes, and his hands were filthy. Needless to say, it finally dawned on me that this was not going to be a normal encounter. He started talking nonstop, some of it nonsense, but some coherent, all of it crazy. Of the parts I could follow, he told me he had just been released from prison and he was looking for a tattoo shop because he wanted to get Fuck the DOC and 34 tattooed on him, and he wanted the DOC to pay for it. He then noticed a button I had on my bag that I had the logo for a local gay bar on it. He told me he had gone there one night and went home with the guy. Then he looked me up and down and said, "But young ladies are my problem." I gathered all my stuff and left immediately. Now, I love this apartment, but it has drawbacks which became glaringly obvious after this encounter. The apartment is on the first floor. I love it because you can walk out the sliding glass doors, one in the living room and one in my bedroom, right onto an awesome gated patio that has a table and grills for barbecuing, so it's awesome in the summer. Now, I hate it because it's right on the street and the fencing is clearly very easy to scale. One very early morning around 5, I heard a man scream, "What the fuck are you doing?" So loud and so close, it woke me up from a dead sleep, and I legitimately thought it was coming from in my bedroom. As it turns out, it was coming from outside. A neighbor had been leaving for work and discovered a man, the man from the park, sleeping against my sliding glass door. The dude got scared off, and my neighbor checked on me. Once I calmed down, I chalked it up to a fucked up coincidence. 2 weeks later, I was sleeping at some point, and this man came on the patio and was now tapping on my sliding glass door. I honestly just laid there, frozen in fear, until he escalated into full blown kicking the glass. I turned the light on to grab my phone and he took off. I called the police and they came over to take a report and to look at the footage from the cameras in the building. The footage confirmed it was a man from the park, and more disturbingly, the footage from the hallway cameras showed that on more than one occasion he had slipped in the building behind a resident and sat in the lobby for several hours. At one point, going down the hallway and trying my doorknob and my neighbor's doorknob to see if they were locked. He even went so far as to hide in the little mailbox room when he saw my roommate coming in from work. The police think he either followed me from the park or had just happened to notice me at one point when I was on the patio. It's been a few weeks and I haven't seen him, and no one has reported seeing him in or around my building. My roommate brought me pepper spray, and my kinda kooky, albeit well mannered neighbor, who has made it very clear he's retired military and a bit of a gun nut, checks in on me nightly. So I'm not as freaked out as I could be, but still, crazy guy from the park. Let's not meet again. Number 5. So this story happened 2 years ago. I was about 16 on a trip to Armenia with my family. We had rented a car and driven around the whole country for about 2 weeks. This incident happened about halfway through the trip and scared the living daylights out of me. So my family and I were staying in this really fancy hotel for a night. My parents had decided to book it as a little treat because they usually just go for regular simple hotels. We were all excited to stay there. It was big and luscious with an indoor pool and gym. We all collectively decided to go for a dip in the indoor pool. It was really fun. We swam around and played with some volleyballs and just enjoyed the fact that we were the only ones in the pool. After having our fill of splashing around, one by one my family members decided to head back to our room to take a shower, until there was only my mother and I left. That's when the creepy guy arrived. We were still in the pool, sitting in the water, when a hotel staff member enters the pool room. I knew his staff because he looked like a local and went to turn on the pool lights by the switch box on the other side of the pool. The first thing that struck me as odd was that he purposely walked by us and stared directly at me with a creepy smile. I was a bit weirded out, but many people look at us weirdly because we look like Europeans. So much light hair and skin, which was unusual for them. Anyways, he stayed in the room doing something in the corner while my mom decided it was time for her to leave the pool and head back. Because I shared a room with my sisters, I knew she was probably still in the shower. I remained at the pool. My mother left, however. The guy kept giving me looks and staring at me, so I quickly changed my mind. I got out of the water, took my towel, and started walking out. The man decided to come talk to me. He tells me how pretty I am, how he thinks I'm beautiful, asks my age, all in broken English. I just smile, nod, thank him, and leave. Again, creepy but not unusual. I go into the women's bathroom just next to the room with the pool. And it's just one bathroom, which is perfect since all I wanted to do was quickly change and get out of my swimsuit into dry clothes so I don't leave a trail of water in the nice hotel. About halfway through changing, a sudden thought struck me. I hadn't locked the door. So, half naked, I just turned around and switched the lock. I kid you not, 10 seconds pass and the doorknob wiggles. I innocently enough just guessed it was another guest wanting to change for a swim, or the cleaning lady. I'm done maybe a minute after and step out of the bathroom, and I see no one. Well, no one except a creepy guy walking away from the bathrooms. At that moment it hit me. He was the one trying to open my door. He turns around, smiles, and walks back towards me. I booked it back to the pool to grab my stupid shoes that I had forgotten, and he was right behind me, a bit too close for comfort. And he keeps giving me those creepy compliments. I just give him a fake smile and tell him I have to go. He then follows me out of the pool area, proceeding to walk just behind me. I arrive at the exit of the wing with the pool, gym, and bathroom, and I see the doors closed. My heart stops. I'm terrified that he might have locked it. I've never been so relieved as when I opened the door with no problem. I almost ran out of there, him still standing at the door. I climb the stairs to go to my room, trying to calm myself down. I get to my floor, and that's when I hear the elevator doors open. Guess who steps out? The creepy guy. He comes out of the elevator, walks to me still smiling, and points towards a flight of stairs leading to the rooftop. He asks me if I want to join him on the roof and look at the view. I shakily decline his offer and run into my room. I get in, lock the door, and hope he doesn't come knocking. I saw him around the hotel a few times after that. He always tried to talk to me. I told my parents and they freaked out, but we didn't say anything since it appeared that he was someone quite important at the hotel, a manager or something. So, creepy pool guy, let's not meet again.